Week 2 is in the books besides 2 games here on Monday night, one of which we are going to be talking about right now. The Cleveland Browns are heading to take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh as 2.5 point underdogs with a lowly total of 38.5 points. We're going to jump into this slate on DraftKings here on Showdown coverage brought to you by sharpfootballanalysis.com. It's nice to see Nick Chubb as the most expensive player on the slate, except it's interesting that he only played 49% of the snaps last week. Now, how much of that do we care? Two reasons. One, terrible rain game where they just kind of blew the doors off the Cincinnati Bengals and didn't really get to see much in that game. Um, the second thing is he still had 18 carries and four catches, had over 100 total yards. So he was still Nick Chubb. It was just really weird to see Jerome Ford get pretty much the same work as Kareem Hunt, if not more. So again, we don't know how much of that was due to the game. Maybe you don't want to expose your best player or theoretically your second best player if Deshaun Watson ever returns to form to the elements like that. So maybe the 49% doesn't stick and Nick Chubb becomes a slam dunk at 12,200. That's pretty expensive for his snap share. So you're really going to have to decide on this slate how you feel about how his usage is actually going to pan out. So the over under 38.5, we don't really have a theme for this game. You could go either direction with either team. Usually if you have a 3, 4, or 5 point spread, you have an offense that could really hit their ceiling. If you're talking about the Chargers or the Chiefs or something like that, you're leaning into the team that's favored by 3 points because you also can see them, putting up 30 points on their own. You don't really have that with either team in this game. So there might be a lot of 3x3s, and they're going to have to be ugly 3x3s because 3x3 is the most popular build. But also, you might just take a stand on a team in a 20 max and say, I'm going to run only Cleveland 4x2s or something like that. So we have Deshaun Watson at 10,600 next. If you have to pick a passing attack that you would like to stack, it would be the Browns. And Deshaun Watson at 10,600 is fairly priced. The difference between Deshaun Watson and Kenny Pickett is about the same as the 1,400 that separates the two. So totally fair price on both. You didn't get to see much from Pittsburgh last week that would lead you to feel comfortable stacking Pittsburgh, and they're without Deontay Johnson now. So it was bad already, and it got worse. Najee Harris at 9,400. He was also in a bit of a committee, although he had a far better share of the committee than Nick Chubb did. Although Nick Chubb led in the touch category by quite a bit, obviously. But if you watched the game last week, Najee Harris just didn't look right. Somebody mentioned it looked like he was stuck in mud. It kinda did, unfortunately, as someone who's a huge fan of Najee Harris. I don't I get that he was a first round pick, and I get that Jalen Warren was either a 6th round pick or undrafted, I forget, but Jalen Warren looked significantly better, as crazy as it sounds, and we've seen crazier things in the world, so it's gonna be really difficult. I know Najee Harris is beloved in Pittsburgh. He's beloved with the Steelers, but it's going to be very difficult for him to hold off Jalen Warren much longer with the way that he looked last week. And it might be week 2 that we see more from Jalen Warren just because the offense looked so abysmal last week that they need a spark. And Jalen Warren has provided a spark in the preseason and a little bit in the first game when given the opportunity. So I could definitely see that occurring. You have Amari Cooper. He's dealing with a growing injury. He was limited in practice heading into week 2. So you might be without the two top options in this game, Amari Cooper and Deontay Johnson. I'm leaning more towards he plays, but they have a lot of good weapons if Amari Cooper is out. It's a little bit different with Pittsburgh, where Pickens is pretty much the only player that we'll be excited about. If Amari Cooper misses, then you still have Elijah Moore, who we know is very talented, just couldn't really get it done with the Jets. And you also have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who I believe is pretty talented as well. David Njoku at 7,000 is a little bit expensive, especially since Harrison Bryant can get involved. I know Harrison Bryant kind of saved my week last week. I was playing the showdown slate with the Browns and had Harrison Bryant in cash at 200 minimum, and he caught a touchdown and got me there. So Harrison Bryant will be involved. David Njoku is more he's not really more of the receiving threat. He's just more involved in general. He's just more involved in the offense. So the price makes sense in that there's not a lot of other options if Amari Cooper's out, but 7,000 is just way too much for him. I'm probably going to be looking to go a little bit lower than him. I mentioned Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore will be um, an incredible play at 6,600 if Amari Cooper misses. I mean, he'll essentially be featured. He'll be the number one wide receiver. I feel like he's already been running ahead. He's pretty much been running ahead of Donovan Peoples-Jones since he got with Cleveland. So expect him to have an incredible game in whatever amount of passing they do in this game. It's not going to be a shootout by any means, which definitely means include the defenses more than you're usually comfortable with. Allen Robinson looked pretty nice last week, as someone who's just happy to see him playing okay football. The last 2 goes for him have not really panned out considering how talented he has proven to be, or he has shown he could be, whatever way you want to look at it. It was nice to see him actually involved. I definitely thought that we'd be going into the week 2 showdown slate and seeing Allen Robinson as like a $2,000 player. So seeing him in actually a feature role, you see right there, he got 11.4 points. A lot of that was PPR, which is good. It means he's getting targeted at 6,200. Allen Robinson's like a good run back if you wanted to do something like, especially since Deontay Johnson is out, if you wanted to do something like a Cleveland 4x2 and run it back with like Kenny Pickett and a receiver, Allen Robinson's fantastic for that. If you wanted to do like Jalen Warren and Allen Robinson and hope that Allen Robinson's just racking up the PPR points, that's fair as well. George Pickens correlates a little better to Kenny Pickett in that Pickens is where his ceiling lies is like a long touchdown, one of those flashy plays that we've seen him make. That's kind of where you pair him with Kenny Pickett. If you want to go to the Allen Robinson route, you can kind of get away from Pickett and go with a piece like the Jalen Warren or Najee Harris, I guess technically is not completely out of the player pool. Pat Fryermuth was fairly involved, 5,800. We wondered what Daryl Washington would do to this. Daryl Washington's just a tackle and a very good one, might I add. We saw him pancaking Mr. Bosa, so um, he's not going to factor in the receiving game, and I don't think anybody cares. He's a massive human being that plays like a left tackle, but can run routes occasionally, perhaps. So don't worry about that with Patrick Fryermuth. It's just 5,800. You don't feel great about, but you're going to look at a lot of these prices this slate when you go to build your lineups and say, I don't feel great about that player. So you're going to have to throw the the salary out in this one. This is the kind of game where I don't even like to look at my lineups after I've built them. Like I'll set my rules, I'll build my 150 or I'll build my 20 or whatever I'm doing. And then that's what I'm putting into DraftKings. I'm not going to, usually I like to just kind of breeze over them and make sure there's nothing egregious standing out that I let slip through the cracks that I didn't make a rule for. In this game, I think it's just going to be set my basic rules and set my parameters, and whatever comes out is kind of what I'm going to go with because I'm not going to feel great about any of them. Now you get to Donovan Peoples-Jones at 5,000. So everybody shifts up with Amari Cooper out if he does miss with that groin. If he's active, I think that I'm probably comfortable just playing him as if he's healthy. For one, I need him if I'm going to be stacking the Browns, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing. And then for two, with a soft tissue injury, I'm pretty comfortable with the fact that teams are not going to play these guys uh, with any lingering soft tissue issue. Like if you're not 100% with a soft tissue, if it's like Travis Kelce with a bone bruise or something like that, I can see them putting him out there. It's pain tolerance. It's not going to get worse. A groin, you're just asking to pull your groin. So I expect if Amari Cooper's active, I'm going to play him as if he's 100%. If he's out, everyone moves up. Donovan Peoples-Jones moves up. He finds himself in Elijah Moore's role from last week. So at 5,000, that would be fantastic, and that would let us fit so many good players. I mean, we'll be able to fit Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb on a pretty regular basis if we get Donovan Peoples-Jones and Elijah Moore as the top 2 wide receivers. And then we'll just have to get unique in how we play our 1 or 2 Pittsburgh Steelers in that case. You've got Calvin Austin III, who had some involvement early, which was kind of surprising. And then he got a price hike up to 4,800. So not really someone I'm super excited to play, but with Deontay Johnson out, obviously everybody kind of scoots up. But Austin is kind of like what you wanted, like maybe like I don't even a Percy Harvin light, I guess, is how they want him to be, but like really, really light, right? So he's they want him to be like their kind of jet sweep guy. Let's use a better example like Mecole Hardman or something like that. I think that's what they wanted out of Calvin Austin. Way undersized, right? But to get him involved in week one was promising to see for dynasty people for sure, but not something that I project long term, even with Deontay Johnson out. So 4,800. I think I'd rather get to Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think I'd rather pay up just a little bit for Patrick Freiermuth, but definitely not someone worth omitting from the player pool because he does have that ability to do some of that gadget stuff that could produce a huge play. Be overweight on the Browns and the Steelers. Don't be afraid to play on both in the same lineups in large field and small field. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but it is an ugly game, and we're not going to be the only geniuses that think to be a little bit overweight on the defense, but we could probably be more overweight than a lot of the field. Harrison Bryant at 2,200. So I already talked about Jalen Warren. He had a pretty big piece of the pie for the running backs last week, but neither of them really got anything productive done. He looked a lot better than Najee Harris, but I mean, I'm not an NFL scout, so it's going to be difficult to determine how that shakes out. But what helps us a lot is the massive price difference between Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. I mean, the price difference between the two is not at all indicative of how close they are in actual production at this point. And it just seems as though it's trending that Warren is going to have to start taking a little bit more of that work. So now we're at Harrison Bryant. Last week, I think he was minimum price when I played him. Now he's at 2,200 because he caught the touchdown. If he didn't catch the touchdown, I think he had 2 targets and maybe 8 yards or something like that. So he's not as exciting as when he was 200. 200 was just an easy play. He's going to be involved in the offense without a touchdown. Not great at 2,200. That doesn't mean that he's not a touchdown candidate. He's been good at that since he's entered the league. So I could see him paying off 2,200. He really pays it off when he catches a touchdown. At 2,200, you're looking for probably about 3 catches for whatever amount of yards to feel good about it. I don't know that he gets to 3 catches. Maybe with Amari Cooper out, you feel a little bit better about that. Actually, definitely. If Amari Cooper is out, you feel a little bit better about Harrison Bryant because they'll run some more 2 tight end sets with Njoku and Bryant. And it's not that Bryant earns targets when he's on the field consistently. He just needs to be on the field consistently to earn the targets. So I will be more interested in him if Amari Cooper's out. If Amari Cooper is not out, then Harrison Bryant's just going to be someone that I keep in the player pool, someone that I have, a little bit of exposure to in 150 max or 20 max, but not much at all. You see Anthony McFarland is out, so that's just a little bit of a boost for Jalen Warren. McFarland played a little bit last week, but it was going to be a Warren and Harris backfield anyways. Jerome Ford is the most interesting. You see he only had 2.6 points, but he did play on 41% of the snaps last week. So he was plenty involved. You had 41% of the snaps for Ford and 49% of the snaps for Nick Chubb. Of course, Nick Chubb has Nick Chubb line, 18 touches, 100 yards, 4 catches. Jerome Ford gets 2.6 points with pretty much the same snap share. So that's just how it's going to be when Nick Chubb's on the field. He's getting the ball, but to score points, you need to be on the field first and foremost, and Jerome Ford is. So did he earn more last week? It's difficult to say because of the rain. Maybe he was only in 40% of the snaps because of the rain, but nonetheless, 400 points for a player that's going to see the field roughly 40% of the time is fantastic. And if he breaks one of those, he breaks the slate and he's in everyone's lineup. So if you have to pick a punt play, Jerome Ford is going to be the punt play that you're going to want to run with. So let's go ahead and build some of these lineups. So we'll start with something with Deshaun Watson. So let's just assume that Amari Cooper is going to be in for this one, and then we'll build one with Amari Cooper out. So we'll go Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper to start out, and then you're going to want to pick one of like Elijah Moore or Donovan Peoples-Jones. we'll make it a little bit harder on ourselves and go with Elijah Moore. We've already priced ourselves out of Nick Chubb here, just going Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore. So we'll probably want to go down to someone like Jalen Warren. All right, so now we're sitting at Deshaun Watson at captain, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Jalen Warren. And then we're going to need to fill these last two spots. We've got a little bit of money. I'll just show you what happens with Nick Chubb. I mean, you could throw Nick Chubb in there, but he did catch 4 passes last week, so I guess he's not necessarily negatively correlated with Deshaun Watson, but we know how Nick Chubb typically produces. I will say one thing that Jalen Warren lets you do, if you do buy that Jalen Warren is going to take more of a workload, then you don't necessarily need to consider him a punt. You can consider him more of like a quote unquote free square at 3,000. So then you can feel good about another $3,000 player like Harrison Bryant here. This is a nice 5x1 in like a huge field tournament. Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Jalen Warren, Nick Chubb, Harrison Bryant. Like that is a plenty viable lineup. It is a Cleveland Browns onslaught, which if you feel like they can, I mean, given what the Browns did to the Cincinnati Bengals last week, it would be not that crazy to see them boat race the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it's really difficult to say with the rain how that impacted the game. But this is a lineup you can consider if you subscribe to that fact that Cleveland Browns are actually good and the Bengals are much better than the Steelers. So let's back out of that one. Let's pretend Amari Cooper's out. That makes this a lot easier. And we'll include Nick Chubb again. Like I said, I don't know that he's necessarily negatively or positively correlated with Deshaun Watson because he could take one of those 4 targets to the end zone. 4 is not trivial for a running back, especially one like Nick Chubb. It's just that it's kind of, I mean, you can see Nick Chubb have a ceiling game where Deshaun Watson only has 8 points, and that would not be unheard of. So, assuming Amari Cooper is out, you've got Elijah Moore and Donovan Peoples-Jones in there. And then you're looking at 2 spots. Probably going to throw Jalen Warren in there again. And then we've got 7,300 to work with. Your David Njoku, your Allen Robinson. Probably do something like Allen Robinson here, leave 1,000 on the table. So Deshaun Watson at captain, Nick Chubb, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Jalen Warren, Allen Robinson. And let's go ahead and build one more here. We're going to do one with Nick Chubb at captain. So you see, I'm pretty much investing in the Browns winning this game, and I feel like they have the better opportunity to put up to overachieve in their total. So Nick Chubb at captain, I'll throw Deshaun Watson in, and I'll just put him with one of his receivers. I really like Elijah Moore, especially if Amari Cooper's out. So I'll throw Elijah Moore in there, and then we will go ahead and put in I think Pickens really works out well with Pickett if we can afford it. No, not even close. Yeah, I should have known that. So Nick Chubb at captain, Deshaun Watson, Elijah Moore, George Pickens. Like I said earlier, you kind of do want to pair Pickens with Pickett, but if he scores a long touchdown, it's not, he could get it done on his own. Jalen Warren, 3,000 left, and then you have your Harrison Bryant again, which is okay. So Nick Chubb at captain, Deshaun Watson, Elijah Moore, George Pickens, Jalen Warren, and Harrison Bryant. The last thing I want to touch on is just being comfortable leaving a lot of salary on the table in this one. These games just get ugly between this division. They always are. So don't feel like you need to take somebody out of this lineup and try to fit somebody else in, especially if you consider that Jalen Warren should be probably like 4,500 or something like that. But that's going to do it for this week's Monday night showdown coverage brought to you by sharpfootballanalysis.com. I'm your host, Adam Wilde. Thank you so much for coming out, and we will catch you all next week. Peace.